They can't hold a candle to this amazing boating jacket that I now have.
I wasn't going to say anything, but I did suggest that we all absolutely roast you in our names on Zoom.
If you remember that scene in Mary Poppins when they go and have tea and they're dancing with the penguins?
And by boating, do you mean drunken boating? Because I can't imagine you wearing that jacket sober on a boat.
You can't say Beetlejuice 3 times or George shows up.
On the Dallas Opera Network, you're listening to Opera Box Score.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Wherever you are, however you're listening, it's America's talk radio show about opera. It's Opera Box Score. I'm George Cederquist, joined by Oliver Camacho, Weston Williams, and Ashlee Hardgrave. All right, this week we continue our summer opera road trip, having visited Dallas and Kansas City by stopping in Knoxville, Tennessee with a special Hall of Fame. And then we reach into the listener mailbag and pull out an see ya later question, plus 2-minute drill. No kids at the opera? Well, this dad thinks that's a marvelous idea. Look, if you're watching on TDO, Dallas Opera Network, you want to subscribe to the podcast on Stitcher. You can even just favorite the show on Apple Podcasts. The whole team back together again. Apart from Matt Cummings, who screwed everything up last week, has now bailed out this week as well. Oliver Camacho, how are we going to punish?
Wow, throwing Matt under the bus. So, folks, yeah, we had to cancel last week's show because our colleague Matt was having internet problems, and he basically wrote the segment we're going to be doing today. So I'm going to be stepping in for Matt as Professor Cummings.
He'll be doing his best Matt impression the whole time.
I don't have enough.
He's going to grow his hair out and get.
Weston Williams, you actually went to a sporting event.
I did. I went to a sporting event. It was women's soccer, Chicago Red Stars versus the Orlando Pride. Orlando Pride, unfortunately, did win that game, but it was a good game. I enjoyed it, and I was like, oh, is this what I should have been doing this whole time on this show?
Ashlee Hardgrave nursing an Olympics hangover.
A deep, deep Olympics hangover, just in time for more pro athletes to go through more tomfoolery. So if you saw the news at all last week anywhere in the Midwest, ex-Cub, current Yankee, and anti-vaxxer when it comes to COVID, Anthony Rizzo, has tested positive for COVID, and I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to file my nails and I'm not going to be bothered because he's New York's problem now. However, Baltimore Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson has now had COVID twice and is still iffy on the vaccine. So I don't know how to help people these days.
For those of you who are not from Chicago, Anthony Rizzo was part of our World Series team, and I thought he had great legs. I think he still has great legs, even if with COVID.
They're dumb legs. It doesn't matter. Oliver.
Those legs are contagious, Oliver.
Yeah,
before
those legs need to quarantine.
Before we talk about opera, I just have to say that I love the Olympics. I'm crazy about it, but this was the most frustrating year, and it's not the fault of the athletes or of Tokyo. It's the fault of NBC and deciding what we needed to see and when to put it on and what channel. There were so many different channels you could watch it on. And then all of the news of things happening that you would get on your alerts or on Facebook or whatever on NPR. I was mad at NPR. It's like, I just woke up. You're telling me what I'm going to watch at 8:00 tonight. Thank you. Thank you very much. So at least the Winter Olympics, I forget what city they're in this year. Are they?
Beijing. We're going to have the same problem. Paris 2024 summer shouldn't be as bad, but not great.
The Cubs swept by the White Sox in the Crosstown Classic this weekend in Chicago. Can I just say that those Wrigleyville jerseys that the Cubs wear are so disgusting. They can't hold a candle to this amazing boating jacket that I now have.
I wasn't going to say anything, but I did suggest that we all absolutely roast you in our names on Zoom.
Well, for our podcast-only listeners, if you remember that scene in Mary Poppins when they go and have tea and they're dancing with the penguins?
And by boating, do you mean drunken boating? Because I can't imagine you wearing that jacket sober on a boat.
You can't say Beetlejuice 3 times or George shows up.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, This is OBS Hall of Famer, our enthusiastic, yet humble, salute to a distinguished opera artist who has gone above and beyond to contribute greatly, distinctively, and with grand significance to the art and honor of opera.
The OBS Hall of Fame, the hallowed halls, are open yet again. This time we turn to Knoxville, Tennessee for our inductees. No Matt Cummings on the show again this week. Oliver, Weston, and Ashlee. Who's it going to be?
So just a little bit of inside baseball for all of you listeners. I used to do a show. I still do a show called Opera Now, where I spent so much time researching and listening to recordings and writing long things and presenting my ideas over the course of weeks on like one opera. I would spend like 3 weeks on it. And each segment was supposed to be like 20 minutes, ended up being like an hour. So that part of my podcasting career, I think, has come to an end. I feel like our very own Matt Cummings has taken the crown from me, taken the tiara, so to speak, of being like the the historian on opera. And I was just thinking, we're in summer mode and there's not a lot of news, and it's been such a weird year and we can't really talk about performances that much. So why not take the opportunity to talk about a piece that singers, just American singers, just love so much. And it's a piece that is adjacent to opera because really only opera singers sing it. But it's one of those things that when we're in training, we're exposed to it and we hear it and we collectively think this thing we're going to listen to today that we're inducting to the Hall of Fame is so beautiful and so American and so nostalgic. And even if you are not like a white little boy who grew up in Knoxville, like somehow this piece just makes you feel nostalgic. And I'm going to let Ashlee dive into why that is and how that works with this piece. But it's called Knoxville, summer of what? 1915?
1915. There it is.
By Samuel Barber. It's based on a text, or it's a setting of a text by James Agee. Agee, thank you. And it was written in 1947 and premiered by the great Eleanor Staber with the Boston Symphony. The text is the opening of a larger prose poem called A Death in the Family, which posthumously won the Pulitzer for James Agee. And it's from the perspective of a little boy recalling his childhood in 1915. And apparently it was written as sort of a memory of James Agee's father, who died when he was a little boy, like 6 years old. And the coincidences one main coincidence is that when Barber was setting this to music, his father was also very sick and I think died shortly afterwards. So he was also experiencing some, family longings and, paternal, feelings like of loss. So there are those two histories or anecdotes that coincide with each other. I think there's a third one. I forget who or what either maybe was a conductor or a singer who was part of the premiere also was having like some father issues. So there's many things that went into the creation of this piece, and where you just automatically feel there is something so sad about this piece, but also so beautiful. And we're gonna get to some music right away. But Barber was a big fan of Agee, and he also set a song, "Sure on the Shining Night," which is one of our favorite songs that we like to sing. And if you look at Barber's setting of this, you listen to it, he really does create this idyllic quality in the music, and it's very Rhapsody like, and it doesn't really feel like it has a lot of structure. It just feels like what do you call it, thoughts when you're thinking
of consciousness.
Stream of consciousness.
Yes. Stream of consciousness. Yeah.
And
the stream of your consciousness went right around that word.
And when we think of opera, we think of something that has point A and a point B and a point C. You know, you're going somewhere, but this piece just sort of like is stuck in a moment, and there's lots of like nostalgia and free association, and it feels somewhat spontaneous. Once again, from the perspective of a small white boy.
Good call, bad call on Opera Box Score.
Another OBS show in the books. Good call, bad call. We're going to wrap it up that way. As always, Oliver Camacho.
Congratulations to the founders and creative team of the inaugural Opera Festival of Chicago. They gave 3 performances over the course of about 2 weeks. They performed Cimarosa's Il Segreto di Susanna, Puccini's Il Tabarro, and a concert of works inspired by Dante's Inferno. Some really great singing, some really impressive casts, creative uses of space, venues that are not normally affiliated with opera here in Chicago. Their first outing as a festival. Looking forward to more from them.
That's great. Weston Williams, of course, silent but deadly. Ashlee Hardgrave.
I have a very good and very apprehensive and cautious call to the Met Chorus, who got to come back to work today for the first time since March of 2020. The social media of my friends who are in the Met Chorus, it was really emotional and very impactful, and I am so excited for them to be able to get back to work. So fingers crossed they can keep going.
I have a bad call. I watched a preview trailer of a film called Annette, which was billed as a rock opera film. It features Adam Driver, Kylo Ren. I literally could not tell what was going on and like why this was a rock opera.
The lightsabers really threw me off too, George.
I couldn't do it. That's it for this week's edition of America's Talk radio show about opera. Our announcer is Norm Woodel. Visit normwoodel.com. On Facebook, search for Opera Box Score. On Twitter and Instagram, we're at Opera Box Score. Help us deepen that bench of listeners by liking and sharing our social media posts. Email us your hot takes at operaboxscore@gmail.com. And subscribe to the podcast on Stitcher or just favorite the show on Apple Podcasts. The views and opinions expressed on Opera Box Score are solely those of the show's creative team. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of the accounts of this show without the express written consent of Opera Box Score is not a suicide pact for classical music, so stop gaslighting us. Our creative consultants, Oliver Camacho, our audio and video editors, Weston Williams. For your co-hosts, Weston Williams, Ashlee Hardgrave, I'm George Cederquist, asking you to continue the conversation about opera as you finish up your back-to-school shopping. We're back with an all-new show next week when Oliver files a field report from Santa Fe Opera. Plus, you get more opera headlines, more hot takes, and more chocolate shakes. Join us.